What's going on, youngins? It's your boy, Younger Pro Black, coming at you with my first installment of these types of videos. I'm going to be doing videos or podcasts in this format, and just let me know how y'all liking it. And today, coming at you with a video titled Institutional Racism versus Social Racism. All right? And I got a question for you. Is there a better version of racism if the result is the same? Can I kick it? When we're talking about racism, we have to be very clear about what we're talking about. Because that word, because of the emotional aspect of it, it gets very conflated. It's very easy to get confused on what you're talking about, right? So when I think of the word racism, I think of, okay, do you mean, did they say some shit? Did they call you a nigger? Did they say something that you didn't necessarily like based upon your race, a prejudice? Did they stereotype you and you didn't like it? Or were they being violent towards you? Were they harassing you based upon your race? Were they being discriminatory with their violence, aggression, or institutional oppression? Were they being racially discriminatory? And typically, that's what it comes down to. And understanding the difference will help a lot more when we're having these types of conversations. The reason why it's important to understand why we must designate different types of racism, must designate precursors to or qualifiers. We must designate qualifiers to the word racism because it is a very blanketed term, right? Especially when we're talking about institutional racism. Institutional racism is very discriminatory based upon race. We know this because we see it every day, and we've seen it for centuries. Slavery was a racially discriminatory institutional practice. We know this because it was Negroes that was slaves, right? It was the Negroes who were enslaved, right? The American Negro. So once we understand this, we can see this play out in other ways in our government. We can see this play out in other ways in our society, because a lot of times the discussion of institutional racism can be monkey wrenched, especially when somebody likes to try to confuse you with social racism. Completely taking the whole conversation off course, right? Institutional racism shows itself in from the military to the educational system to the judicial system, to the legislative system, to every different facet of government. This institution is completely discriminatory or discretionate against us based upon our race, right? And it would be ignorant of us to act like it is not any other way. It would be ignorant of us to go out into this world thinking that, oh, shit is just fine and dandy because I have white friends, or because I know people who claim that they would never commit harm against me, and but they damn sure don't understand your culture, and they damn sure don't care to come to understand your culture, but they'll mimic it and profit off of it while you're still being marginalized. But hey, they're your white friends, right? So this is how we get liberal and conservative racism mixed up, right? So there's all different kinds of qualifiers to the word racism because there's many different aspects to our life. There's many different points in which we will face different kinds of racism. So in both regards, when it comes to liberal and conservative racism, we'll face institutional and social racism, right? When it comes to the liberal aspect of it, we experience institutional racism in the form of welfare, in the form of Planned Parenthood, in the form of, oh, let's help you niggas, but not actually do anything that would make a difference in changing your economic position, which is why we're still in poverty as a people. And COVID didn't do anything to make that any better, any easier, or anything. But it will also be portrayed that, oh, well, there's plenty of successful African Americans, there's plenty of successful American Negroes, there's plenty of successful Negroes in America, whether they're whether they're born here or whether they immigrated here, or I said immigrated, whether they migrated here. They're proof that, oh, we're all American, and we're all have the same opportunity, and stuff like that. This is more of the conservative side, but and on the liberal aspect, you have the discussion being, oh, well, we're all in this together, and all minorities are down and oppressed, and we're all oppressed the same. And it's like, nah, y'all wouldn't even have the chance to be recognized as a minority if it wasn't for all the legislation that was passed during and after civil rights. So I don't even want to hear that. Put in some of that same dedication and acknowledgement towards why you're here and what provided the opportunity for you to have an opportunity to make something of yourself, and for your family to make something of itself, and to have generational wealth now that you've come to this country, and have been able to benefit off of minority status, when really there was a certain time when it was just Negroes and caves. This country would not be able to be what it is if it was not for the institution of slavery. Bottom line. And then when we're talking about conservative racism, we run into this whole, oh, well, we're all American and everybody has the same opportunity. Just pull yourself up by the bootstraps, and all that jibber jabber, right? But the thing that conservatives forget is we live in two completely different Americas. We wouldn't be having these discussions. It wouldn't be all this if the government didn't allow black people to be economically disenfranchised in every way. Anytime, especially right out of slavery and during Jim Crow, there were plenty of black societies that were prospering. And this could not be allowed to take place for too long. So in comes the government, in comes white mobs, in comes, let's say, social racism being the social racism being the violent part of it, being some of the first terroristic attacks upon our people after slavery were these acts, were these atrocities. Rosewood, just to name an example. So when we talk about these things, we can't say pull yourself up by the bootstraps and then say, well, every time I literally make the boot and the motherfucking shoelaces, y'all take them motherfuckers, burn them shits, and then burn my factory down. Very disingenuous. And it's all very disingenuous. The whole conversation is bullshit because this is what they don't want. They don't want us being able to come together to where we can get other people to see what happens when we come together. Once we get our shit together and once we stop disrespecting ourselves publicly and in our communities, black folk, once we get our shit together, everybody's gonna follow along. They're gonna have to because they already follow us anyway. So, but at the same time, why would they be true advocates? Why would they be true allies when we can't even get our shit together ourselves? Right? So, all in all, anytime somebody comes to you and they say that you shouldn't be talking about institutional racism, anytime you talk about really any form of racism, but institutional racism, because personally I could give a fuck about, and I don't think that we should be too caught up on social racism, and we hopefully will not get confused on what these two things are and why they're different. Because at this point, social racism is almost a fucking compliment because we shouldn't even be here to experience it in the first place. I don't care. I laugh when we're called all types of whatever. I don't give a fuck at this point because we shouldn't be here. So the fact that we're still here is like fuck you. Like I hope I hope that makes you feel better. I hope that fucking makes you feel better. But since we are here, it is our responsibility to lift ourselves higher, but we have to come together. We have to come together. So anytime they're telling you, oh, don't be talking about institutional racism. Oh, you're making yourself into a victim. Blah, 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 blah. Just ask them one question. If there's no such thing as racism and we're all the same American, why isn't this institutionally acknowledged and practiced? And see where that gets them and see what kind of response you get. Remember, black folk, it's community or nothing. Peace.